Welcome. We're going to have a great session tonight. There is a QR code on the screen right now, as well as a shortened link, bit.ly/DEVVAS, and that will take you to get any information on previous or future events, registration, the playlist, and a donation opportunity. Devva's Room is co-sponsored by the Disability History and Culture Collective and the I Love You Lead On community. Slide. So tonight we are planning that Dr. Nirmala Aravelis will be with us thinking about disability in troubled times. And we will get started with Ashten Vassar-Cain speaking about medical marginalization, intersections of transgender and disability rights. Next slide. Next month, same time, same second Wednesday of the month, Elaine Gerber will be with us talking about reproductive justice. Next slide. As I said, if you need any help accessing the event, or you find that you want to request a voice option during the presentation, you can email us at capital LEAD, capital ON, lead on at capital I, capital LOVE, capital YOU, I love you, hyphen, capital LEAD, capital ON.com. So that's lead on at I love you, hyphen, leadon.com. And if there's something that you need, you can raise your hand if you're familiar with using that at the bottom of the screen, put something in the chat. We'll try to get to you. During the presentation, all the Zoom attendees will be muted to support access and reduce the background noise. If you need to use your voice to communicate during the presentation, just email us again. We'll arrange a separate voice space so that you have that. After the presentation ends, we'll open up the mics for conversation that will be unrecorded. One person, one voice at a time as usual. And chat comments will be read aloud to provide access. If you happen to post something in the chat and you don't want to read it aloud, you can private message one of us as the host, and we'll be happy to read it aloud for you. We will have ASL for the presentation, and the ASL interpreter will be spotlighted. Auto captions are available and can be viewed on screen or as a transcript. In the Zoom toolbar, there is a CC option, and if it is not there, click the three dots that are in a circle for more options and locate it there. The ability to show, hide, or adjust the captions is there, as well as the option to view captions as a transcript. Devva's sessions are recorded and will be available on our playlist within a few days with corrected captions and transcripts by our master corrector and transcriber behind the scenes. You can find the playlist again on the Devva's Room website at bit.ly/capital DEVVAS, capital ROOM, and there is a QR code on the screen.
Yeah, most of you have either been here before or were friends of Devva's, so some of this is pretty much known to you. So Devva Kasnitz was, I've decided to call her the mother of the disability studies, because that's really what she was. I haven't actually seen anybody use that as her title, but I think it's appropriate. She was one of about 7 people who hashed it out what disability studies was about 35 years ago. And then as it evolved, she became the first director of the Society for Disability Studies. And she kept that position for 35 years. And she had always wanted disability studies to be more than what it was. In the beginning, I worked as her assistant through most of these years. And in the beginning, it was not very intersectional. In the beginning, it was primarily academics that were of mostly higher echelon white academics. But as time went on, we had more minorities come in. We had people who from the LGBT community. We had people who had disabilities that impacted more than their physical being. I mean, in the beginning, actually, there weren't a lot, it was probably 50-50, people with disabilities and people without. But as disability studies grew, more and more people with disabilities became a part of it. And the Society for Disability Studies always was primarily people with disabilities. There were always allies with us. Allies are always important, um, especially when it comes to certain disabilities. Allies can be incredibly important. Um, but Deva died in January, and her death was unexpected. Was She had been ill through the fall, but nobody thought it was going to happen. And it happened very, very quickly. It went from a diagnosis on a Friday and her death the following Saturday. So it came up very unexpectedly. And I wanted to do something to memorialize the work that she had done and what she'd hoped would continue to be done. And one of the fantasies that she always had was that people would do disability studies at a kitchen table, which is sort of what she and I and others would do when we would get together. We would do it at a kitchen table, or we would do it at a conference table, or we would do it in the bar. Um, so disability studies wasn't just something that belonged in academia, it belonged to our community. And so that's what this is it's an attempt to bring disability studies to our community so that everybody, no matter what your background is, can have some understanding of what disability studies is and our history and our community. And hopefully, when you leave here tonight, you'll be feel as if you're a part of this really wonderful, amazing community. And one of the amazing members of our community, one of our younger members of the community, is Ashten, who's here. And he is an amazing man, I must say. He is taking on so many projects that I'm so envious that he's involved with. He'll talk about some of those, but one of them that he's very involved with is Pennhurst, and that is an institution, one of the more ugly institutions that we have had, and he's part of restoring what we know about it so it isn't lost and helping find the people that are buried on the grounds and giving them the respect that they deserve. But that's only one small piece of who Ashton is, and he's going to be talking about the other pieces that he is. So it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashton. I use he, him pronouns, and I am currently based out of Connecticut, but that is going to be changing. I'll be moving to Philly to do some more work with the community archives at the Pennhurst Memorial and Preservation Alliance, specifically working on the Speaking for Ourselves collections. So getting the voice of self-advocates during the deinstitutionalization movement. Um, Front and center and in an accessible format online for people. Um, a little bit about my background. I am currently in a library and archive master's program at Simmons University, and I recently completed a master's degree in human rights where I focused on genocide studies and torture at the University of Connecticut. Um, and my background there is American studies and psychology. We don't really have like a disability studies discipline, but I think that you don't really need it because disability is everywhere and it's in everything. And I think that when you start to notice that and start to unpack all of the overlap and the ugliness. There's space for a lot of community building. Um, and it's very political, as we've come to know very closely. I think that people tend to have this issue where they see disability as like an individual impairment that affects anybody differently, like and they put that on this is how somebody interacts with the world and this is their mind and their body, but they don't want us to realize that we have collective power, and that the state is very invested in like isolating us from each other. And so what I want to talk about today kind of comes a little bit out of my studies in like medicalization um, as a tool of state enforcement. And I'm heavily inspired by the work of Dr. Zola, and it's wild because I know that some of you knew him personally. So um, there's one quote that I keep coming back to where he talks about in 1972, his paper, Medicine as an Institution of Social Control, he talks about medicine is nudging aside, if not incorporating, more traditional institutions of religion and law. It's becoming the new repository of truth, where absolute and often final judgments are made by supposedly morally objective experts. And these judgments are not made in the name of virtue, but in the name of health. So there kind of becomes this as we talk about the medical model in disability studies, we're used to kind of um, having disability kind of viewed in that way, and with the shift to the social model, we have to also understand that it's not just disability that the state is interested in regulating; it's all aspects of ourselves. Um, so I think about this a lot with race and gender and class, and the ways that our shifting definitions of disorder has been used to um, move out more and more to get as many people as possible kind of like categorized into these boxes, right? Because if they can't criminalize you necessarily, they can disable you and then justify continued incarceration and abuse. And of course, that's something that we've all kind of experienced at different levels, some more intimately than others. And I think that right now we're at a really critical moment, where with the two most recent um, pressing executive orders on this seem to be trying to cast the net as wide as possible, to criminalize dissent, but also make it a seemingly a mental illness. And then when talking about um, like politics, people can sometimes then get trapped in the ableism of it all by saying, "Oh, we're not like that." And I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with thinking more broadly about the boxes that we're put into. And so I guess coming here today, I want to talk about the specific intersection of transgender rights and disability rights, because yesterday it was the first one of the first cases heard by the new term of the Supreme Court. Is called Childs versus Salazar, and I can put that in the chat. And this case was brought before the Supreme Court by a therapist from Colorado, who Colorado is one of, I believe, almost 30 states that have banned or heavily regulated conversion therapy for minors. And for those who don't know, conversion therapy is um, sexual orientation or gender identity like change efforts. So that can mean a lot of things. That can mean within the home, within a church, within an outpatient setting. It even happens in institutional settings. Um, and it is a pretty nasty practice. The UN has also said that it could amount to torture in some cases. And this uh, this therapist brought before the court that she believes that it was the conversion therapy bans challenge her freedom of religion and free speech. And the fact that we're even having this heard at the federal level is quite alarming, because the science is there. It says that this does not help people. This is extremely traumatic. Um, it's torture, it's abuse, and we've been here before, right? Um, when we've seen this with other kinds of like uh, I'm sorry. It's kind of it can be a little bit difficult to talk about because I think that we all see it happening again and again, and it's just kind of like, I wish that there was more that we could be doing. Um, because when I think about like the rights that we've had to fight for as people with disabilities, and kind of like even the right to be recognized, that we are included in the right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. Um, it it's a long battle. And then I think about stuff like how Indigenous Americans were institutionalized to justify like land grabs and just punish like cultural differences. And I'm thinking about how the like amidst the civil rights movement, for Black Americans, they changed the definition of schizophrenia to like persecute people who spoke out against injustice. And I think that we're here again, right? Um, so sorry, I have my notes pulled up here. Um, right now, if you are a transgender American, um, the way that we access healthcare is regulated under essentially what is a medical model. And so, for some most states, there is something called the W Path, which is the World's Professional Association for Transgender Health, that kind of regulates how we access and navigate systems of care. Um, and that is like basically saying that we need a medical claim to access life-saving treatment. And there are some people who say it's good that it's regulated that. I personally also think it's dangerous, when we try to give the state more authority over how we have our bodies. And then this is also coming at the same time that Texas versus Kennedy, which is formerly Texas versus Becerra, was the 17 states. They're not moving forward with it any longer. They're still up in the air, but they were challenging the protections offered under 504 because of the recognition of gender dysphoria accounting as some sort of disability under that language. So basically, an attack on any of us can bring us all down. And the people who benefit from that um, want to keep it that way. And I run into a lot of issues when I try to talk about what it's like to be both a physically disabled and autistic person and a transgender person, because I think that our communities are a lot more similar than we think. Because are kind of both staring down this type of power structure that does not fully recognize our humanity. And um, thinking about how I kind of got into like disability studies and especially studying institutionalization, I was institutionalized for a few years at a conversion therapy facility in an extremely religious state. And when I was kind of going through this, um, it was not just my like transgender identity that they were fixated on, but they thought that the fact that I like identified proudly as disabled and I didn't see that as an issue was also another identity issue that they could fix for me. Clearly not. So it was a big waste of time and money there. But it gave me a lot of insight as to why and how our struggles are really interconnected here. Um, and so I want to bring up the Childs versus Salazar case because my friends were in DC yesterday, um, outside the court building, um, and they have been writing and petitioning and trying to do some awareness because I think that conversion therapy is still extremely misunderstood. Um, it's very insidious in the way that it operates because there's kind of been this shift recently to calling it reparative therapy or calling it like they used to call it like XK therapy, but they have kind of started shifting to be like, oh, now we're calling it gender exploratory therapy, where you can the goal is still to align yourself with being a cisgender heterosexual individual. Um, and when I'm kind of thinking about the disability justice movement and disability liberation, I find it reassuring that um, whenever I'm interacting in these spaces, there's kind of this theme of that like we don't need to be fixed, that we are whole and complete as we are, right? And I think that that's kind of a shared sentiment that I am getting organizing in these other spaces. And I've been very lucky, I think, to connect with folks that are um, so willing to hold multiple truths and fight multiple fights. Because I think that our collective power is something that we have kind of been um, intentionally prevented from kind of picking up, and we do it anyway. Um, so I guess and I'm a little nervous because I did not expect so many people to come, and I'm recognizing people, and I'm like, oh my God, I like read all your stuff, and this is so cool. But I think that kind of a lot of the work that I've been like studying and researching on um, is just speaking to kind of this larger question about like medical influence and imagining kind of doctors as state actors. And when I was talking in genocide studies to my professor and my boss and stuff, and I'm like trying to make the case for a better understanding of medicalization and violence, and how when you are so okay with dehumanizing and segregating a group of people, like that has a major reflection on the lengths that you'll go to as a society. I think that people are most familiar and most willing to interrogate the role of physicians in atrocity crimes. In the case of like the Nazi doctors, because that was such like a well established kind of arm of this eugenic and propaganda machine. But we're hesitant to look at kind of where that came from. That came from us that came from America. We were heavily inspiring kind of the work that happened there and the tragedy that has continued to unfold. And so when I think about what it means to like think about the medical model and social model of disability, I I see the medical model as being really closely tied to violence and marginalization. Um, And I mean, that's not to deny like the like biological reality of like that like by me not ignoring medical model doesn't mean that my legs are just going to work tomorrow. But it would be really nice if so many people didn't have a vested interest in curing me of that. And I think that that's kind of similar for how I think about like being a trans American right now. um, the specific language that's being used to discuss transgender rights right now is really polarizing and intentionally so. Again, there's a lot of really loaded and like emotionally charged language being used to describe trans people and to dehumanize trans people. Um, and I think that I was pretty, I guess, just alarmed by the way that um, identifying transgender people as some sort of common enemy was also um, being used to undermine like the decades of disability rights that we've all fought for, where we're trying to say nobody deserves to be institutionalized. Section 504 is extremely needed, and I think that kind of it's been difficult kind of watching this, right, after being uh, after studying the history for so long and trying to make sure that we don't go back to it. Um, and so kind of where I'm at right now in in this community space is just kind of trying to reach out because they want us isolated and they want us insecure. Um, and it's also heavy too because a lot of my friends um, who have kind of been in these really traumatic institutional settings or faced this discrimination on the basis of disability and gender um, are kind of living through it a second time in real time, while there's also these younger people or people who are newer to their journey or we're on the in the midst of a mass disabling event with COVID, and new people are kind of entering the disability community. New people are kind of coming out in their gender journeys. Um, and for the folks who have kind of been there and seen what happens and you want to be welcoming and we want to meet everybody where we're at, but it's also extremely traumatizing. And it's extremely difficult to see court cases that we never thought would make it as far as they're making it, right? So I kind of just keep coming back to the question. I was like, what do we have if we don't have each other? And what similarities can we see in these stories that we have? Um, and so yeah, I don't really have like answers for any of it, and I'm still waiting to see what the Supreme Court will end up deciding on this case in particular. But I think the rhetorical choices that are being made about how we talk about transgender rights is very, very closely aligned with the rhetorical choices in how we've historically talked about disability, and how we've historically talked about race and gender as a means to other and incarcerate people. Um, so that's there's I know that's a lot. It's a lot on my mind. And there's no easy answer, but I think that these there's a lot of similarity here. And you just got to keep doing it.
So, Ashton, I'm wondering, are the people who are pro conversion therapy the same people who are against gender affirming care? Or are there people who are more against conversion therapy than gender affirming care? Or is it really one group of people?
So I think that it's multiple groups of people, which can be hard to understand. I think that there are people who would say that they're against gender affirming care, which, and to be clear, gender affirming care does not necessarily always mean medical transition. It can mean respecting somebody's name and pronouns and treating them like a person. It could be the clothes that you wear. It could be hormone therapy and surgeries. It could be name changes and document changes. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of people that are extremely against medical interventions for gender affirming care. But I would also say that there's people who are against gender affirming care that don't want us to go through conversion therapy either. I think that there's not a solid united opinion on it because the messaging has been so purposely confusing. And so um, with conversion therapy too, it's difficult because it doesn't look like one thing. It can happen in like I know people who are ex-Jehovah's Witness or ex-Mormon in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, whose conversion therapy primarily happened as adults talking with their bishops at their church. I know people who have had it mostly within the home. I know people who have had it kind of going to an outpatient therapist one-on-one and trying to talk to them about how they're feeling and maybe getting met with kind of just some really extremely invalidating um, treatment. But I also know people like myself who we did not have kind of the choice or agency and we couldn't leave. At the facility that I was at, I was there for 13 months when I was a teenager. And the entire time that I was there, I wasn't allowed to have like a name. And so we had a lot of extremely like physically abusive, emotionally abusive conditions that we were living under. And the goal for my conversion therapy was not healing, it was compliance. And so that's kind of really the only way that you can get out of a situation like that. And thankfully, most people who I know who are survivors of conversion therapy have not experienced it in an institutional setting. That's just one way that you can experience it. However, it is extremely damaging to people's sense of self and also to trying to access community and gender affirming care later in life. Um, so, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap and also variability in how we talk about conversion therapy and gender affirming care.
So are people recovering who have gone through conversion therapy? Is it something that you really never get over, or is
So,
there a promise that you can become a, I mean, you certainly appear to be a healthy person, but uh, I mean, can you become
um,
psychologically healthy after having gone through conversion therapy?
I would say that for people who undergo conversion therapy, our risk of multiple repeated suicide attempts is 2.5 times people who don't experience that. Also, it can be difficult then to access medical care or access mental health care when the people who are in charge of caring for you, who are in charge of who market themselves as mental health professionals, have not been able to be trusted historically. So for me, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but in my own personal experience, it's been very difficult for me to access um, mental health care, even if it's like somewhat affirming mental health care, just because of that power imbalance, makes me really uncomfortable. Also, a lot of our community, there's like ties to family support is kind of rooted in like, are you going to go through with this? And if not, like you're kind of ostracized uh, from your family and your other sources of support. Um, For me, I also have a seizure disorder now as a result of the conversion therapy that I experienced, and so that affects me pretty much every day. Um, but and oh, because a lot of it was also like kind of chemical stuff, so like heavy like sedation and drugs. And sorry, not to get into like that, because that's like not the happiest topic, but yeah, I think that it affects people in different ways, and everybody's healing journey has looked really different and difficult. I'm almost 10 years out from the worst place that I was sent to, and I'm still kind of feeling it every single day. And that's kind of why I was getting frustrated a little bit when I first kind of joined the field of disability studies. I was having conversations about disability and grief and politics and anger and all the stuff that we need to be talking about, right? And I saw that there was, as somebody who was disabled from a really young age, like genetic with a genetic condition, um, I always felt like that was a part of me, that that's something that I have, and that I feel lucky that I was identified as disabled as at a young age because I didn't have that kind of um, like grieving process that some temporarily able-bodied people experience, and it could be really rough. But I also do have a like legitimate like grief that I had to go through when I became like multiply disabled through um, what was supposed to be a treatment. So that's kind of where I find myself kind of holding these things of like, I'm really proud of my disabled identity and I'm really proud of the experiences that have led me to where I am today. But I also acknowledge that this pain is something I never had to experience and something that I never want anybody else to have to experience. So so my disabled identity is very tied to my queer identity, not just because of some overlapping circumstances, but also because of the ways that I've kind of interpreted it in a political sense.
So Margaret had a comment. I'm going to read it. I'm assuming you wanted me to read it since it's put it in the chat. Um, so thank you for presenting the work you are doing. Oops. I can't. Sorry. The work you are doing. Uh, sounds amazing. Very heavy, granted, but much needed. And I appreciate the connections you made between these communities. As a queer disabled person myself, I really resonated with this presentation, and my heart is heavy knowing what you went through in conversion therapy. I'm so glad that you are now able to bring your perspective to this field. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That makes me happy. Because when I guess when I started studying this, when I started especially studying historic state institutions, um, I think that there's kind of this uh I guess urge to want to believe that we've moved on from the harm that we've caused. And granted, some of most of the larger state institutions don't exist anymore, but private companies do, for-profit companies do that are replicating um, some of similar structures of harm on different scales, and it's harder to regulate because there's really no oversight for how private companies operate in different state licenses, et cetera. And so I was hesitant at first when I started out, because I wanted to kind of speak very objectively about kind of like all of this stuff. But it's kind of hard to be objective about stuff that is can be so personal and can affect so many of our loved ones. And I noticed that people weren't really taking me seriously until I got the degree, which bothered me because I think that this type of knowledge and this type of connection is more valuable when we're just kind of having, like you said, the kitchen table conversations, and kind of seeing each other um, as equals on the same level. And that it means a lot to me that we have spaces like this where we can do that.
Do others have questions or comments? You can put them in the chat and I'll read them, or you could unmute yourself and ask yourself.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. I'm listening to you and I'm just thrilled that you're carrying on this work. I have 3 degrees in rehabilitation. I started out my career in the independent living movement early on, and I came out in 1976. Um, I knew Tommy Olmsted from the Olmsted Act because I worked in Georgia. You know, the fact that all of us women, all of us have to continue to fight battles that we have fought. Makes me sad, but to see you doing that is so appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. It's definitely something I have a lot of admiration. And I growing up kind of without like a sense of like participation in disability culture and having kind of like role models that I could look to who are like fighting the same fights that I am. Um, it's something that I'm very grateful for at this point in my life that I have people that I could I go to and say they've been here before and they get it. Um, but it's also a little bit strange because I think that I have like a pretty big kind of sense of obligation. I know a lot of people who, because of conversion therapy or different forms of institutional abuse or psychiatric abuse, are no longer with us. And that weighs heavy because I kind of feel like, oh, I have a chance to do something. I went to grad school, I got this job or whatever. And it's that stuff doesn't really matter to me, but it's more of that it's the chance that I got that I know so many other people didn't get. Um, and I try to do that with their memory in mind.
Anybody else want to make a comment? Ask a question?
I appreciate your patience. I know I trip over my words sometimes. I've never really talked like that. Oh, I see a
Oh,
hand.
you're absolutely fine.
Hi, I'm Mallory, and I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, I have kind of created my own crypt space here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So anybody that's in Charlotte, North Carolina should hit me up. And I found that there is so much crossover between the trans community and disability community that crypt space is very thriving with both trans disabled folks. And I've been trying to find ways to bring disability studies to them. So I'm really excited to bring this talk to them and show them the crossover that I've been seeing everywhere. So thank you.
I think it's really cool. To me, like people with disabilities and trans people are like the most punk, like cool people I've ever met before because like there's so much that we have to do that is uh like counter narrative, like by design. We have to make space for each other. We have to help each other out, and we are always kind of looking for new ways to interact with community. And I think that that's been really beautiful for like for all its challenges. I feel extremely lucky um, that I'm able to be part of that. And I really couldn't imagine any other way. So like, because when I think about like what is the point, I guess, of people who push conversion therapy and conformity like this? I'm really glad it doesn't work because I could not imagine my life the way that they wanted it for me. And I quite like my life now.
If you could go back to your childhood, what do you wish would have been different, like in early elementary school? What what could have helped you find yourself, feel better about yourself as a very young child?
That is such a cool question because I think so. The conversion therapy facility I was at was not the first facility my parents had sent me to. They had previously sent me to programs for physically disabled children. And it was kind of more about restricting like access to my mobility aids and trying to get me to pass as able-bodied. This did not do great for my mental health because instead of like being encouraged to kind of like talk about what was going on, I was kind of told not to acknowledge that I was in pain, not to acknowledge how I was struggling or if people were treating me differently. And so I kind of bottled it up a lot when I was younger, like how to express myself and also how to express when something was going on that I wasn't okay with. And I think that my parents' attitudes towards disability is actually what made them make the choices that they made about my gender transition, because they saw it again as they're like, oh, here's something to be fixed, and we've done that before, and we can do it again. And so I think that accepting my disability and accepting my gender have kind of been a very similar road. Um, so yeah, going back to my childhood, I came out like as trans when I was 14 and like was pretty much immediately on a plane to Utah. Um, so but before that, I was visibly disabled, struggling with coming to terms with that identity, and struggling. The people around me were struggling to come to terms with that identity. Um, and when I came out, it really wasn't like a big kind of like coming out moment like that you see on like TV where it's like, oh, I have something I need to say. It's like, no, like I didn't think that it was a big deal, so I just kind of said it, and I didn't realize that it was going to be like such a big deal to the people around me. And now I have a lot of recovery to do because of everybody else's expectations. But I think that like if you just kind of let kids be kids and figure their stuff out, that's really all we can do, right?
Have you looked
Ashton,
at any of the books that are about that are geared to elementary school kids about transgendered kids? And what did you think of them?
Um, so I'm currently in a library science program, which is I guess with the background in politics and psychology, I was like the least evil thing I could do is go be a librarian instead because we do not need another I don't want to be kind of in politics or in psychology in that way. And I think that libraries are right now really becoming this kind of controversy hotbed, especially around queer issues and how we talk to children. And I think that it's not really controversial to want to say um, that like children deserve to be loved and accepted. And I think that that's kind of been at the heart of these messages that I'm seeing that everybody is kind of distorting for some sort of agenda is that children deserve to be loved and accepted. And I think that that should not be so controversial. But I think that if you're so my family has kind of shared their opinions of like if they had known that they were going to have a disabled child, that they might have made different choices. But um, you have to be ready for whatever your child is going to be. You have to be ready for whatever, like, because the people that you're in community with, you don't have like control over how they live their life. It's kind of weird to want control over how somebody lives their life. I never fully understood that. But yeah, I think that the debates around like book bannings and put it's so hard to be like a trans kid. So my heart is really going out to trans children right now because I remember how hard it was when I felt like it was just like me against everyone. And I was kind of like in facilities under the Obama administration and under the first Trump administration. Now I can't imagine everybody's eyes on you as a trans child just trying to get by. Like that's absurd.
So Catherine has something in chat she wants passed on. She says, visually impaired. w- I am visually impaired. Work in Philly with also queer trans space boundaries. Oh, no, I'm not reading this right. Oh, sorry. It scans too quick. Also queer trans space, acting without boundaries. A principal in Philly touch tours. Work mostly in museum spaces.
That is so cool. I definitely want to reach out because I'm spending more time in museum spaces and I want to meet cool folks when I go to Philly.
Ashton, this is David. As
Hi, David.
I'm one of the people who did know uh, Ken, and you are very much like him in a way. And he took his academic uh, insights and turned them inward and examined himself carefully. That's how his book, um, I'm sorry, I said Ken, Irv Zola. That's how his book got written. And he, you are very much like him in the sense that you're doing the same kind of work with the same kind of passion. People who met him felt that. One person said, "You never got a real hug till you got a hug from Zola," and I can say that that was true. The other thing I would just say is that some of the experiences that you have and other people who have devalued identities undergo um, uh, are have a substructure to them, an economic substructure to them that highly stabilizes these patterns. That's why we see them for so long. The book Health Communism, I think, is one that tries to explicate that. Why it stays around so long, and the incredible profits. The whole country basically based around these kinds of issues of medicalization, and then the other one is Bill Bronson's book, Public Hostage, Public Ransom. So I think those are good books for people who, kind of are following what you're saying and understanding your experience, how that plugs into some of these larger socioeconomic issues. And keep that up. Keep the great work up.
I definitely got a lot more reading to do. And at the start of this meeting, I was so nervous because I saw Art Blazers here, and I was writing a paper that was so like heavily citing your work recently that I was like, oh shoot, I was not expecting to see you here. So I kind of was like, oh my God, this is such a cool group of people.
Well, and you're part of that cool group of people.
Ashton, this is Alice, and I'm just curious if you have ideas about what the next few years are going to look like for you, like when you finish and move on into the world of whatever we call it. Having just experienced that with my daughter, like what do you see in your near future when you're no longer a student, just a student, or a student
Um,
and a researcher?
so I'm about to start a 2-year project, focused on archives, and that's a work project, not necessarily a school project. But when I think about like future planning stuff, it's kind of hard for me to think about like jobs immediately. I'm thinking primarily about safety and people that I care about who are really kind of struggling with some uncertainty. I think about consistent access to our healthcare. I think about whether it's going to be legal to discriminate against us for housing. Um, and in a way being tied to an institution as a student or as like as employment kind of offers those protections, but it also kind of makes you more of a product sometimes than a person. Um, and I guess the reason that I've kind of been so like career oriented lately is because I just wanted to provide the most options and opportunity for the people in my life as possible. Because I don't know, it's kind of challenging because I want to be like, oh, this is all going to be like an overreaction and we're all going to be fine. But I don't believe that, and I'm not in the habit of lying to myself. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say I'm very new to this group. Like this is my first time coming to this group. I was recommended by a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Beth Mount, and she suggested that I join around storytelling and hearing different people's backgrounds. I'm definitely an ally. I've worked in the community, the beloved community of disability, mostly intellectual and developmental disability for now, I guess 25 years. Yeah. And helping people to get connected to their own community, their own tribe, based on their shared interest, you know. So that's a unique piece. But um, you know, mine is more of a comment. I really appreciate your candor and applaud you for the work that you're doing. I'm connected to a group called the Othering and Belonging Institute. You might be familiar with them. Okay. And this kind of puts me in the mind of that, hearing you talk about your life and the people that you are kind of standing up for and speaking for. And it seems to be the OBI seems to be filled with lots of intersectional lives that I personally appreciate. I'm originally from Harlem, New York City, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. But
Okay.
yeah, your talk reminds me of, you know, just the work that I see being done in the Othering and Belonging Institute. So, but thank you so much for sharing parts of yourself. I know that's got to be a vulnerable space to be in, and I appreciate all that you are bringing forth tonight.
Thank you. I've lived in New York and Cincinnati, so that's kind of cool. Yeah,
Cool.
I it's lovely to be here. I think that I also think about Tobin Sieber's work a lot on vulnerability and human rights and how we imagine like human rights in like the neoliberal framework of being tied to like a nation state or a citizenship as a rights granting body, and his arguments around vulnerability. And recognizing rights and personhood on the basis of vulnerability. And I'm kind of thinking about that in conversation with like all these wonderful intersections that we have. And it's like we are kind of the strongest at those intersections, and that's not um it's not a deficit at all.
It's, it's our pleasure. I really enjoyed your talk, Ashton. And the next bit you're teaching political science and now retired. And an issue that I've thought about lately, certainly a lot of the hostility threats is from the Trump administration, but a particular concern is simply to Democrats who, on some issues, are very supportive of rights, on trans not so much. And one thing we noticed in California is Governor Newsom, who would very much like to be the next president, who really seems to be supportive of some people's rights, but there made some comments about the trans community. The other that I'm not so sure of, and perhaps someone else can either tell me I'm wrong or confirm it, that Pete Buttigieg, one of the leaders of Democratic politics, that I'd heard in some of the discussions of Kamala Harris's book, which I haven't read, that he was essentially very supportive of gay and lesbian rights, but not of trans rights.
Yes, yeah, that is a huge concern, and it's on my mind a lot right now because I think that the neoliberal establishment of like the mainstream Democratic Party is unfortunately willing to throw us under the bus. And right now, with the government shutdown and these bills about healthcare, a lot of the sticking points end up being about gender affirming care or gender in some way. And I think that it sucks kind of being the bargaining chip. Um, I've met a lot of people who might kind of maybe self-describe as more liberal, who, when it comes down to it, aren't willing to include trans people and stand up for us and protect us. And that's hard to come to terms with if you're, I guess, like new to understanding liberalism, but I think we all kind of um, are past that. It's I wish I could say that it's shocking to hear comments like that, but I'm really not surprised when I hear comments like that. And I wish that that were not the case. But I think that people kind of see it as like, oh, this is like a minority group, and they're catching all the flack for it. And so we can just, in the interest of protecting more people, start just kind of going against us. And I don't think we can afford that kind of division. And I don't think we can afford that kind of scapegoating. Um, because I think that, of course, everybody realizes that if you start turning fingers and pointing blame at people, it's coming for you next. Um, and I, I I think that we have enough historic precedent to be speaking up louder than we have been. And I think that that's kind of been my issue, is like seeing how okay people who would probably describe themselves as allies to me are with how I'm being treated.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, but I don't think that we're going to find the answers in the Democratic Party either.
Well, Ashton, I knew you would be wonderful, and you were. So thank you very much. We can open this up for conversation. Nirmala Araveas, who's supposed to be here, um, something must have come up. I will see if we can get her to come next year, because she is an amazing professor that pushes buttons, everybody's buttons. But her students adore her. You read the reviews of her classes, and you know she's a dynamite teacher. Um, if any of you are interested in doing a Devva's Room, let me know. We also, in January, will be starting Justin's Room. Justin's Room is in honor of Justin Dart, and everybody is welcome to come and tell your story. These will be short stories, not long stories. You'll get 9-10 minutes to tell a story. You can recite a poem, you can sing a song, you can show a video, whatever is the type of thing that works best for you to tell your story. And so that will be monthly starting in January. January, hopefully, will be stories about Justin Dart. But after January, people can tell stories about anybody or anything. Um, and then we also have Judy's Room, which has been around for about 5 years. And it's in honor of Judy Chamberlain. And that's done with Mind Freedom International. And that is mostly social psychological issues related to disability. Mind Freedom is an organization that's primarily psychiatric survivors. So a lot of the workshops relate to those issues, but not all of them. It's a very exciting group of people to be a part of. And hopefully you'll think about coming to Justin's room or Judy's room in the future. I think Sharon's got something we're going to show at this point, and after we watch the video, we can open it up for discussion about anything people want to talk about.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Devva's Room. Devva's Room is a virtual space open to all, seeking to bring anyone interested in disability studies together in conversation and in solidarity. Devva's Room is inspired by the life and legacy of Devva Kasnitz and her outstanding contributions to the field of disability studies. Devva's Room is volunteer-led by members of the Disability History and Culture Collective and the I Love You Lead On community. In a 2023 reflection, Devva wrote of her determination to be more comfortable in study and advocacy and to blend them together to create a diaspora of disability studies best ideas. By holding regular events led by prominent and emerging voices in disability studies, we hope to honor this mission. Devva believed in a fully inclusive world that respected everyone's communication strategies. Inclusive and accessible technology can be costly. You can help support technology expenses for Devva's Room, which will allow us to grow and expand. If you have the resources to contribute to the development and sustainability of Devva's Room, please consider donating by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting the link in the chat, donorbox.org/Devva-S-room. Thank you so much for showing up and learning together with us.